Hi folks, I'm Kathy Gutierrez and this is Classlet 2, the couch edition. Thank you all for joining me and thank everyone for your very thoughtful, perspicacious comments on the reading last week that you left on my blog. You guys are great readers and I'm really enjoying our conversation. Okay, so this week we're going to talk about eugenics and, last week we left off with Darwin. And Darwin was not a big fan of people tinkering with natural selection. In fact, he says that the domestication of animals runs contrary to natural selection because humans breed animals for what is good for the humans, right? Not what's good for the species. I give you Exhibit A. This is Julia. She is a dachshund. She's got the long back, little stubby feet. Right, dachshund, right? It's a badger hound. And badger hounds, we're talking about European badgers, the sort of long, skinny, weaselly sorts of things, not the American badgers that'll attempt to take down a grizzly bear. So Julia was bred to go down long, skinny holes, right? And, get rid of varmints. Julia doesn't work anymore. Julia's never worked. A lot of animals don't work anymore. We just, feed her and let her hang out and watch TV on the couch. Just for being cute. That's her only job. So, that's the kind of thing that Darwin's talking about, right? That when humans tinker with animals, we tinker with them for what's good for us. Right? Okay, so, not a fan of tinkering. Darwin was perhaps surprised when 10 years after he publishes his book, his cousin and good friend, Sir Francis Galton, this guy, publishes this book called Hereditary Genius. This is 1869, and in Hereditary Genius, Galton really creates modern eugenics, and in fact he's the guy who coins the term eugenics. He does that in 1883, but he is considered the father of modern eugenics. Now, what Galton is worried about is that the better sorts, he's, very upper crust British kind of guy, the better sorts get married later, because they do things like go to university and settle down and buy houses and lands, and then they get married, whereas the lower classes don't do that, and so they start producing at a much faster rate, right? They start sooner, they go longer. Well, he's worried about this. So, he proposes what comes to be known as positive eugenics, which is basically just, keep the lower classes from marrying until later, right? Limit their reproductive capacity. Negative eugenics is actually going in and, hurting people. So, so that's Galton, and he is a huge spiritualist. How did that happen? I don't know. But yes, so there he is. So, spiritualism and eugenics, not necessarily a fit, but the idea of progress, right, that we talked about last week, starts turning inward, right, and people start thinking, well, we can hurry this along, right, we can hurry this along by breeding for better people. And what do we mean by better people? Well, we don't necessarily mean, tall, good-looking blonde people. Not we, but, the folks we're talking about, frequently are talking about more intellectual people, more spiritual people. And that idea of taking responsibility for the future of the human condition by watching human breeding, a lot of people think is going to cure all sorts of social ills. Now, this brings us to today's reading, and one of my very favorite people, his huge historical crush, Victoria Woodhull. Love her. Okay, so Victoria Claflin was born into this kind of nasty house. Her father was he pretended, I don't know what his intent was, but he cured cancer, which of course nobody did in the 19th century. And she lived in this house with these women with breast cancer, like, screaming through the rafters. It was just dreadful. And she was one of 7. And her sister Tennessee, or Tenny, they were very close. And when Victoria was 10, she started hearing spirits, and even at the age of 10, her spirit guide was Demosthenes, right? The dead Greek orator, which I think is just beyond awesome. Anyway, so her father would send her and Tenny out and, peddle snake oil and have seances and read palms and, make money for the family. It was very little girls. So, at the age of 15, Victoria marries this guy, I think, to get out of her father's house. His name is Canning Woodhull, and Canning is a womanizer and a drunk. And she has 2 children with Canning, one of whom is Zulamad, who's one of the great joys of her life, along with Tennessee. And the other one is, and I'm quoting Victoria here, the beautiful but imbecilic Byron. Now, so she has firsthand experience with being married to this brutish, nasty guy, and having this child whom she's going to have to be responsible for his entire life, right? Byron will never be self-sufficient. So Victoria has this astonishing life. This is not to say a happy one, but just an astonishing one. She does all sorts of stuff. She and Tenny are the first women brokers on Wall Street. It's because Tenny was having an affair with Cornelius Vanderbilt when he was quite aged. But anyway, they're very successful. They made a lot of money doing this. They published their own newspaper, Woodhull and Claflin's Weekly. And they were the first people in America to publish Karl Marx. And Marx would write into the editorials of Woodhull and Claflin's Weekly with this, very jovial, sort of friendly relationship between them. 1871, Victoria is among all of the big names from Seneca Falls, and they go to the House Judiciary Committee and demand the right to vote. 1872, Victoria creates an independent political party and announces that she's running for president. First woman to run for president. She can't vote, but she can legally run for president. Go figure. Now, this more spectacularness, right? She names as her running mate Frederick Douglass. Another dude who can't vote. Anyway, and Douglass neither confirms nor denies that he's running for vice president with Victoria Woodhull. All right, so Victoria is this really avid spiritualist, and she becomes the president of the National Spiritualist Association. And the piece we're reading for this week is prior to that. It's one of her first appearances at the National Convention. And in this piece, you'll see that she's still very pro-marriage, and this is Vicky. But in fact, she had been outed by her sister, Utica, out of jealousy, I have no doubt, as a free love advocate previously, the year earlier than this. And Victoria became the public symbol of free love in America. Oh, she'd managed to divorce Canning at this point, but she ended up nursing him until the day he died. He came banging on her door, destitute, and she took him in and took care of him. I don't. She gets a lot of grief for being a free love advocate, but I think that speaks, pretty well of her. Okay, so anyway, so here's Vicky, pro-free love, woman broker, National Spiritualist Convention, and just an avid proponent of eugenics. And as, in fact, she gets older, she drops the free love platform, but she becomes, really strident with the eugenics. And this is, I think, particularly interesting because she's one of the few maternal voices in the eugenics discussion. It's mostly, male scientists who are, harumphy-gadsing about the poorer classes. But Vicky is approaching this as a mother. Now, I've been reading Victoria Woodhull for well over 10 years. I've written about her. I have already confessed my huge fandom. And when I read Vicky, I still go, oh, I can't believe she said that. So I think that her audience in 1871 must have had that experience with every sentence. So I know that this is going to, you're not going to like every word of this. She says some stuff that I'm sure some folks are going to be, frowning about. But imagine what a woman speaking in front of thousands of people in 1871 talking about the future of the population, right? It's kind of astonishing. So I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you next week. Bye.